My name is Brianna. I'm the Manager of Certification here at CSGA. And so this webinar, during this webinar, we're going to go through the updates for the 2021 season. So the invitation for this meeting was distributed to all lead and alternate inspectors so that they can provide support to their inspectors. Inspectors weren't specifically invited, but if you are an inspector and you're here, you're more than welcome to stay. In season, if you do have any issues, please contact your lead inspector first. They will most likely be able to help you, and if they can't, then they will forward that correspondence on to either Janet or I. We will start with the list of changes to Circular 6. Then we're going to touch on some of the processes that are in place for this season. Then we'll go over the 2021 changes to SeedCert, and finally we'll give you a heads up about some significant program changes that are going to happen over the next year here at CSGA. So the first thing we'll go through are the notice of changes to Circular 6. Point 1 talks about probation plots. So in 2021, the maximum size of probation plots has actually been increased to 2.5 acres, up from 1.25 acres, to be more consistent with select plot production. The qualifying period to begin probation has also been adjusted. In the past, a grower would have been required to have produced pedigreed seed of the same crop kind in at least 3 of the previous 5 years in order to be eligible to begin probation, and using that same crop kind that they had been producing. Going forward, a grower may only need 2 years of pedigreed seed crop production in any crop kind in order to begin probation, but to cover that 3rd year, they will need a declaration from a select grower. Once a grower is on probation, they can choose to go through the 3-year probation plot process that's currently in place, or they can reduce the length to 2 years by completing certain modules in our new e-learning platform, which will be available in the fall. When it is released, there will be education materials, there will be lots of communication, so don't worry that you will miss it. Growers who are currently on probation have access to the learning modules as well, so they can reduce the length of their probation. Growers who have completed 1 year of probation would be starting their 2nd year this year, and so if they take the learning modules over the winter, they could be an approved plot producer by the beginning of the 2022 season. Growers who have already completed 2 years and who would be starting their 3rd year this year have the option of just finishing up their probation as they normally would by planting a probationary plot, or they can just go ahead with field production, so no plot production in 2021, and then do the modules over the winter. And then again, they would be an approved plot producer by the beginning of the 2022 season. Point 2 is big. So foundation status seed of section 2 and 3 crop kinds can now be produced by any grower, regardless of accreditation, even if it is their 1st year of pedigreed seed crop production. It's important to know that growers will still require plot accreditation if they are producing foundation status seed of a crop kind that requires that that seed be produced in plots, so section 13 crops. Point 3 is a housekeeping change to clarify the grower of record for a pedigreed seed crop. Previously, the definition of a seed grower existed in a few different places in Circular 6, so this just aligns everything and brings them into just a few places. Point 4 talks about post-certification issues that may arise where CSGA has reason to believe that the varietal purity of a crop has been affected. So maybe something has happened post-harvest, maybe something has happened with cleaning or mislabeling. It clarifies CSGA's authority to revoke those crop certificates. So we've always had this right under the seeds regulations, and we have used it rarely, but now it's in Circular 6 for full transparency, and so that growers are well aware of this as well. Points 5 and 6 talk about clarifications made to select and probation plot isolations. Circular 6 now requires that the plot and the adjacent plots or fields be planted with the same seed, whereas in the previous version of Circular 6, it only said that it had to be seed of equivalent status. So while the wording of this notice says that the 1 meter isolation is required, there is still the option to stake in lieu of that 1 meter isolation in Circular 6. So plots can still be staked if the adjacent plot or field is planted with the same seed, and if the plot in the field or the adjacent plot have the same land use history. Points 7, 8, and 9 address new requirements for new crop kinds that have been added to Circular 6 in 2021. So point 7 talks about new requirements for the production of parental lines and certified production of composite and synthetic mustard. Point 8 introduces requirements for feminized hemp seed. And point 9 introduces certification requirements for parental lines and certified production of hybrid wheat. Because these are very new regulations, we're still in the process of working with CFIA to develop inspection procedures, especially in the case of feminized hemp. And so CFIA will be conducting the inspections for these crop kinds for the time being. So if you do happen to get any applications for these seed crop kinds, if they sneak through, please let me know and we will switch them to CFIA. Point 10 revises our existing higher voluntary and additional certification requirement framework. So currently the breeder or variety maintainer can set additional certification requirements for their varieties over and beyond what is required by Circular 6 to preserve the varietal purity of their crop or to preserve the activity, absence, or presence of a specific trait. These framework revisions allow CSGA to streamline the maintenance of these higher voluntary and additional certification requirements, and they will improve transparency so that inspectors and growers have full knowledge of all of the requirements that are in place to complete the certification of crops of these varieties. So this might include like what labs can even do the testing and what the grower has to provide to CSGA. The main difference between additional certification requirements and higher voluntary requirements is that additional certification requirements will probably be in-field requirements. So maybe a modification to the isolation if that variety is prone to outcrossing. And so they would require a change to the inspection procedures. There aren't any varieties currently in production that have these additional certification requirements, but there have been some rumblings, and so this might be something that happens in the near future. Higher voluntary requirements, on the other hand, will most likely involve post-harvest testing, so either to confirm a trait is present or absent, or in the case of midge-tolerant wheats, to determine the ratio of the two varieties that are present in the blend. Point 11 is housekeeping revisions again to clarify the definition of an authorized inspector and their roles. There's one sentence at the end of this section that has been added that some of you may have noticed, and that is, the sentence is that CSGA may, after approval by the CFIA, accept an inspection report from an individual who's not an authorized inspector in exceptional circumstances. So this sentence gives growers another option to have their fields inspected if the pandemic should go really sideways in 2021. It's just another tool that we've put in place in case of dire emergency. Hopefully we won't have to use it. Are there any questions about those revisions to Circular 6? Or about Circular 6 in general? Nope. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go move on to some updates to CSGA's processes. So I'll just start off by saying that last year's COVID measures remain in place again for this year. So please try not to interact with growers as much as possible. And if you have to, please follow the guidance of your local health authority. If you have any suspicion again this year that there are fields that will not be inspected for whatever reason, please contact me as soon as possible so that we can work with the grower and CFIA to develop a plan for those crops. Crops that are not inspected cannot be certified. So we really want to make sure that no crops go without an inspection again this year. There are a few minor updates, a few major updates that you should be aware of that are outside Circular 6 and SeedCert. One is about maps, and the other is regarding one of our research projects. So in 2021, growers are again asked to submit tags for every field, as well as either maps or GPS coordinates. The change for this year is that if a grower submits an application for CSGA seed crop certification without supplying either GPS coordinates or a map, they have 14 calendar days, not business days, to provide that information. If the information is not provided, the payer will be fined $50 per field. Make sure that nobody pays that. We have a notice that will go out on the 4th and the 10th day after the application is made. And that email goes right to the grower. It won't go to the assignee. So the grower will receive an email from us indicating which fields are missing that information And it will also provide a link for the grower to send that information to CSGA directly. In addition, the growers online portal, which was called the CSGA members area in the past, but which is now going to be called SeedCert, and which I will talk about at the end of this presentation, will also be modified so that growers and assignees will be able to filter for those fields that are missing maps and GPS coordinates. So even without having that email, they can check and look and see which ones that they need to provide that information for. That what I've just described is just for maps. We don't have any similar processes in place for tags. We do not have guidelines for maps. There are no minimum requirements in Circular 6 for maps. So if a grower has provided, as long as a grower provides something to us, it will trigger our system to check that, yes, there is a map available. If the map is not sufficient for the inspector to find the field, or if it is inadequate, the advice would be to work with the grower to try and get that information. If you have examples of maps that are not sufficient, if you could please forward them to me. I can't guarantee that we will take any action on it, but it will help us maybe develop some standards for maps in the future.
Can you take a question?
Mm-hmm.
In the event that a grower provides maps at time of inspection, that's not adequate for the grower anymore, is it?
No. So if they don't submit their map within 14 days of the application, they get the fee. If the application is made late, so maybe days before the inspection, they are required to submit that information before the inspection occurs. If we don't have that information at the time of inspection, they will also get that fee.
Did you say maps or coordinates?
Maps or coordinates, yes. So if you recall in SeedCert, there is a way to, and I'll demonstrate that when we get to it, but there is a way for, if they've only provided the GPS coordinates, when they click on map, it will bring up a Google Maps, and it will pin the GPS coordinates on that Google map. Frank Deskey has a question. How will the auto renews work in regards to map? I'm assuming you're talking about the perennial fields that are renewed?
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Yeah, so the way the system is designed, and Janet, please correct me if I'm wrong, but when that perennial field is renewed, the map from the previous year does get drawn through as well. And so the grower should not get a fee for that. If you do hear any instances of that, please let me know. We will credit the grower that fee, because if we have a map, it should trigger. But maybe, Janet, we can touch base after just to make sure that is
the way the perennial applications are working. Yes.
Okay.
What if they didn't have a map last year and it just auto renews? Yeah.
They'll need a map this year then. If they didn't provide one last year and they don't have GPS coordinates that were drawn through from last year, then our system will say that they have not supplied that information and that they will get a fee.
Okay.
Kim McCaw says the Pioneer maps have GPS coordinates, but in some areas the GPS does not work in low internet areas, or the Pioneer maps do not have adjacent roads. That's interesting, Kim. Normally the Pioneer maps are very high quality, so I would suggest maybe talking to Pioneer to provide that feedback. I think they would be interested to know. If you do have any examples of that and you can send it to me, I can work with Pioneer if you'd rather do it that way. Are there any other questions? Oh, okay. So with GPS coordinates, what I'll show you in SeedCert is it will generate the map, and you can take a screenshot at that point if that's helpful. If you don't have any internet at all and you don't have GPS, you must be able to access SeedCert at some point. And sorry, I don't know who that is, BPSD2. Could you just write your name? Maybe we can touch base afterwards as well to try and find a solution that works for you.
It's Bob Lepishek.
Oh, hi. Okay.
I have a lot of areas that have no internet service at all, and very difficult to locate those.
So do you normally collect all the information you need before you set out to do the inspections?
Or occasionally have to meet with the grower and get the maps from them, because there's no signal available, so you cannot locate them.
Okay. Okay, so those growers would be accustomed to providing the maps at the time of inspection rather than in advance.
That was my question earlier.
Okay. I mean, if you have a list of those grower names, maybe there's some way we can get that data from them beforehand. We'll have to figure something out so that those growers don't get piles of these.
Brianne, is there not, it's Amber from Northern Alberta, is there not a way that SeedCert can be set that at the time of application, if they don't enter a GPS coordinate or attach some type of map, they cannot proceed and complete the application?
It would be possible, but I wouldn't, it is an option, but I wouldn't want to do that. I think what that might cause is it might promote late applications. It might make people more frustrated with the process. If people don't have complete information at the time of application, we normally just send them a letter saying these are the pieces of information that we're missing. And so I think that's more consistent because maps are not required in Circular 6. It's not a certification requirement. We can't technically refuse applications that are missing maps. At the same time, we do refuse applications if they don't have an inspection service, and that's not really in Circular 6 either. So, there's a little bit of flexibility here, and this is new for this year, so it is going to be a little bit bumpy. But hopefully, if you can, please communicate with me with any issues that you might notice. We can try and reduce some of those bumps before they become truly problematic. There are some growers that provide aerial maps, but they're no good. Yeah, so Kim, if you're able to talk to those growers and just say that you need a little bit more precision, that might be a good first step. Okay, just bear with me. There's a couple of questions here. Internet service is significantly variable in New Brunswick. I thought growers were required to provide a legible map with roads. So in Circular 6, there isn't anything that defines a map and what needs to be on a map. There is guidance in some of the SWIs and the QSPs. Actually, it might even be SWI 142.1. And that's a CFIA document. So growers don't routinely go to the SWIs, and there is very nice guidance in there. So if they were following, that would be perfect. But growers don't often read the SWIs, and the SWIs, while they may define some roles and responsibilities, the growers aren't particularly held to those. So there is a little bit of a challenge there. Because inspectors are expecting a certain quality of map, and that's not required in Circular 6. So please, if you have maps that are deficient or which are, insufficient to help you find the fields, please send those to us as examples. Like I said, we probably won't follow up on them this year, but it could be used to form eventually some guidance that goes. I don't know if it would go in Circular 6, but perhaps a guidance document to growers as to what maps are acceptable and, maybe best practices in terms of maps. Okay, there's a lot of comments about this. Janet, are we able to save the chat? I think we are, eh?
Yes, we can. And I'm taking note as well.
Okay. So clearly there's a lot, this is a pain point for inspectors, and we do recognize that, and that's why there is a fee in place this year. So, we're taking baby steps towards a perfect future where maps are beautiful. But this is the baby step that we're taking this year. So if we can work together, maybe next year we can have a guidance document in place for growers. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is a research project that CSJ will have available to all growers in 2021. So it's a mechanical impurity research project that will inform a review of the mechanical impurity requirements of crop kinds in Section 2 of Circular 6. So I'm just going to bring up the example for wheat production. I think production. Wheat production. Okay, so if a field of one of these crop kinds in section 2 is found to have mechanical impurities that would cause the crop to be demoted to a lower class, or which would cause the field to be declined pedigreed status, but that are not more than 3 times than what's permitted for certified production, the grower will be sent an email inviting them to enroll that field in our research project. If there are multiple mechanical impurities found in that one field, as long as none exceed their qualifying limits, the field will still be invited to enroll. So for example, say we have a wheat crop that's going for registered status, and the field has, it can have up to 24 oat plants. So even though the field is going for registered status, the qualifying limit is based on the amount that would be permitted in certified production. So if they've got oat plants in there, they could have up to 3 times 8, so 24 oat plants. They could have 15 triticale plants, which would be 5 times 3. And they could have 12 barley plants, which is 4 times 3, and the field could be enrolled in the research pilot. This project only extends to fields, so plots are not included. Fields that are in the research project will have either an MIRP1 or an MIRP2 code associated with them. So if you're curious in the season, you can search the message column by MIRP and see all the fields that have been invited or that are enrolled in the research project. At the end of the season, the grower will be required to provide information regarding the cleaning process, so the equipment that they use to clean the seed, and as well as a seed analysis showing that the seed meets a grade before any certificate will be issued for the field. There's a second research project that is in development that will look at alternative means of reporting corrective actions taken by growers where there is an insufficient isolation due to mechanical impurities. There will be information released about this project when it's launched a little bit later. If you have any fields in the meantime that you feel may qualify for that, and the appraisers will certainly note those as well, please let me know. There's only a few changes to SeedCert this year. Not quite like there might have been in previous years, but we'll go through tab by tab and identify all the changes. I'll demonstrate the map option that exists, although I'm not quite sure. I wasn't set up for that, so I'm not sure which of these fields might actually have GPS. I'll go to field 4 Hudson. So on the applications tab, one of the bigger changes is that the report submission time, all of the timestamps that are captured are now based on the user's local machine rather than the CSJ server. So anybody who's working late in the evening in Western Canada will no longer be penalized for submitting their reports or their forms late. Having said that, those of you who might be in Eastern Canada no longer have that extra buffer time. So please be sure that you're respecting your local clock. And one thing that I also wanted to demonstrate that we put in place last year, but I couldn't remember if we put it in place after the training was done, but you can now see the seed source in SeedCert, and some of you may have noticed this already. This information was previously only available on the application form image and the report form image that's generated at the time of the inspection. So if any seed sources were added after that report was submitted, the inspector and the ASCIS wouldn't know because you wouldn't have that information. But now we have it here in the seed source section, and this pulls directly from our database. So whatever's here is whatever is current. A situation where there's a sequence with GPS coordinates and not a map, I can describe what would happen. So if there were GPS coordinates but no map, clicking on View Map would bring up a new window with I think a link to say that GPS coordinates were provided. Please click here to see it in Google Maps or something along those lines. And if you click on that, it will map the GPS coordinates on Google Maps. So it's just, they can provide the entrance to the field and the center of the field or one of those data points. They don't even have to provide both. So it's sort of, it'll help you find the field and it'll give you directions to the field, but a map is better because the map will define the borders of the field, and in case of plots, it will show you where the plots are, whereas GPS coordinates may not be so precise. But it is an option that is available to growers. Okay, then now there are no changes on the report tab, so I'm going to skip over that one. That's a good question, Kim, and I will get to that at the end of the presentation. So Kim was asking if it was mobile friendly. The big change here is that we now have a notice of personal leave that is available. It is available on the Forms tab, but it's also available on the ASCIS tab. It requires the LSCI number to complete and the start and the end date, as well as the reason for leave. And if you don't want to say, you can always pick others. This form is to be used according to section 5.5 of QSP 142.2. And it's not meant to cover maybe, like if you're absent for a week or a month. It's if somebody can't work for the whole season and they can't accrue their 20 inspections for the previous 2 years, they can use this form to signal to CFIA that they are unable to do that. And CFIA will collect these and take that into consideration when they go ahead and renew their license, when they go ahead and renew everybody's licenses at the start of the next year. So the reason why it's on the ASCIS tab as well is if the LCI is, not thinking of CSGA, when they're taking their leave, the ASCIS can do it on their behalf. Okay, the other big change is to the inspection form directly. So I am going to pull this through. So I'm going to pretend I'm completing a report modification. You'll notice it populated here with information already, and that should be from the latest report. But if you're not, even if you think it is, just please continue to select the proper report from the list. We have overhauled the report image that's generated at the end. And because of that overhaul, we've allowed for a lot more information to be provided here. So all of the comment boxes are now 500 characters. Please don't feel obliged to provide 500 characters, but you do have 500 characters available if you need it. For the impurity descriptions, you now have 50 characters, which will help with the wheat. When you're doing a report modification, you're now able to modify these general condition of crop boxes, which I think in the past were fixed. And what else? Oh yes, the last one is about reportable weeds. So if there's any weeds that are found that have to be reported by frequency, there's now a drop down available that has all of those weeds, so you don't have to type it in. If there were any prohibited noxious weeds found, there's a drop down as well, but the note section here has been increased to 200 characters. If you find that that's not enough, please continue to provide the extra information in whichever comment box that has space available, and the appraiser will see it. The big change, like I mentioned, comes on the other end. So when the crop inspection report is generated, it's no longer held to that single page format. It's now flexible. Sorry, and this is French, please excuse that. So if there's multiple seed sources provided, it's not only going to show the first few, it will show everything that we have in the database. Same for previous land use. If there's 5 years, 6 years, it will show 5 or 6 years. If there's only 2 years, it will only show the one row. So, there shouldn't be any empty rows here. It will condense them and just show what we have in the database directly. Similarly, the comment boxes will squish and contract. Yeah, that's the same thing. Expand and contract, depending on the content that's provided by the inspector. This is a work in progress. So one of the things that will be happening is that if a table is split, we'll try and find a way to get the column headers to carry over. But at the very bottom, if it does roll into a second page, the bottom will say page 2 of 2, just as the top will probably say page 1 of 2. And they'll have the sequence number and the crop inspection year down here. So if the 2 pages become printed off and dissociated for any reason, there still will be a way to connect the 2.
On an earlier frame, you had an item at the bottom that said was an accurate map provided. Is that redundant? Because now would we be responding to that, or are you already dealing with that at time of application?
That's a good question. So I'll go back to the inspection form. Was an accurate map supplied? Yes, that would be helpful. So if you pick no here, It does give you the option to provide an accurate map if you happen to have one. It's not required. But if you indicate no here, that'll be a signal to us, and we can search at the end of the year for maps that are inaccurate.
So are we responsible to provide that map if there was not a map provided, or have you already screened that out earlier in this whole process?
Is there someone from CFIA who's available to address that question? No, I don't see any CFIA members on here. As to the responsibilities of the inspector, that really is CFIA territory, and I'm not 100% up to what is required. So my advice to you would be to ask your I'll try and contact CFIA as well to see if I can get an answer on that as well. But I don't want to give you an answer right now in the case that it's wrong and I'm setting you up for failure in season. I'm sorry that, Bob, it's probably not the answer you were looking for.
Not quite, but
yeah,
I'm sure we'll get an answer.
Yeah, so Kim has a point. If there's no map in CFI, cannot find the field that that was inspected, does that go against the inspector when they're audited? Yeah, so like I said, I'm not comfortable providing an answer here just because I'm not 100%. And I would advise you to, okay, so Charlene has an answer. I would just advise you to talk to, if you know your auditor, to talk to your auditor to find out what the procedure will be for this year.
Brianne, it's Amber, and every year I get one of these cars because it's a minor and I don't have time to chase maps. So the way I understand it is you'll get one car whether you have 6 growers that have no map or whether you have 27. But it is a minor car, but it only counts once, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Amber. Are there any questions about the new report form or the image that's generated at the end?
Hi, Brianna. When you mentioned about previous crop, just it says if you got it for 5 years, it'll be there, but for 2 years, it'll only show 1 year.
Sorry, it'll show one
that correctly?
row. Yeah, so it'll show one row. If you look at the report form here, it's got them side by each. So 2020 would be here, 2019 would be here. So if they have 2 years, one row will show, but it's still showing the 2 years. There will be no data loss. Everything that's provided to CSGA will be available on the report form.
Mind you, there's a lot of times a lot of growers only put in the previous year. They don't put the second previous year anyway. It's just a matter of us capturing it, but
yeah,
used it for chasing for maps anyway, so it's fine. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to move on to the ASCIS tab. The only change here is that the notice of personal leave is now available on this tab. Everything else is the same as it was last year. While we're here, I should say that there is this, some of you may have this and some of you may not, but some of you may only have the 2 contact cards for the lead and alternate inspectors. There's a 3rd contact card that can be available, and that's to populate information for the seed locator. If you do have it, please know that when you modify this information, it doesn't automatically update our website. It's not quite connected up that way. So if you do make any modifications to this particular contact card, please send that to me in an email. And then we will make sure that the seed locator, the service provider locator, is updated properly. That's a functionality that we're working towards. We're just not quite there yet. Okay, so in addition to the changes to Circular 6, there are a couple big advances that are coming in 2021 that aren't quite in place yet. So one of them, and you may notice this shortly, is that we are bringing the members area into the SeedCert platform so that growers and inspectors are both using SeedCert. They're both going to the same location to access information about their fields or the crops that they are inspecting. So you may notice later in the year that your login screen will change and look like this. If an LSCI number is put in here, or an inspection service that doesn't function on the members area normally, logging in will take you right to the SeedCert that you are familiar with. Growers, however, logging in will be taken to the new members area. So this is what it's going to look like. And like I said, this is rolling out for growers this year. For inspection staff, it will be rolling out next year. So the improvements that you see here, you won't quite have access to yet, but you will have it next year. This is all mobile friendly, and Janet's been working very hard to ensure that all of this would work very nicely on a phone or a tablet. You'll see the look and feel has changed, but functionally everything is the same. So the crop history, like it's the same tabs. The crop history tab has the fields that the grower is producing, or the assignee, or the third party if they are logged in. What's new is that there's now filters available on the side. So if a grower is wondering what fields require action, it'll take them right there. If they're wondering what fields do not have maps, they can click on this and it will give them a quick list of everything that's missing. They can still look at previous years up here and export to Excel. This is mostly the same. It's modernized in appearance and the functionality is improved. If you have any bookmarks to forms that you use regularly, it may be necessary for you to update those bookmarks because the URL will change. So if you have any forms that you have bookmarked that you cannot find on SeedCert, please send me an email. I will help you find the right form. And we may, if it's a form that you use regularly, maybe it's something that should be accessible through SeedCert anyway. Or there may be a newer version available in SeedCert. So that is, okay, so that's the members area adjustments that are to come, and which will come to the rest of SeedCert in the following year. The other big change is that CSJ is getting rid of all of our paper forms and we're going fully digital, which includes the crop certificates. So the salmon colored crop certificates will not be issued this year. The digital versions of the crop certificates are going to be the official versions. So in process of doing this, we have updated the appearance of the crop certificate as well. And here's an example of what they're going to look like going forward. So there'll be a QR code here that growers can use because growers will still be printing these off, I imagine, and using them. So the QR code can be used to validate a hard copy crop certificate. The person with a hard copy can check to see if the hard copy they have is the valid version. The format is essentially the same, although like the crop report, the crop certificate isn't going to be stuck to the one-page format. If there's lots of fields on one crop certificate number, the crop certificate, or lots of message codes, the crop certificate has the option of dipping over into a second page. I really don't have that much more to say about this at this point in time. We're aiming to release this in mid-June or the end of June, so there will be a lot of communications going out from CSJ about this. If you do get any inquiries from growers in the meantime, please send them to CSJ and we will help them out. As inspection staff, you may not even notice this year, but in 2022, when growers present the evidence of the eligibility of the parent seed to produce pedigreed seed, they may be giving you copies of these newer crop certificates. So if you do see them, please do not be surprised. That is the complete list of all of the major updates and things on the horizon. In addition to that, sorry, no, I said that too soon. There are the learning modules that will be coming out in the fall. I think we're aiming for September right now. So growers will have access to those learning modules over the late fall and the winter cycles. Are there any questions? The session is recorded, and so the recording will be available in 1 or 2 weeks. Hopefully, we'll put the post, we'll link the recording in the help tab of SeedCert, but I will also distribute them by email so that everybody has it handy. And if there's anybody who's not in attendance here who would benefit from these from this session, you can forward it on to them.
Could I just ask one question regarding seed certificates and tags?
Mhm.
In the event that a grower is not available at the time of inspection, or is away for like a 10-day period, which we have in some cases, and we are requested to check the tags or the seed certificate, can we simply go with unavailable, not have to follow up, or do we have to follow up later on because we have to submit the inspection report in a timely manner?
So that's a good question. And I hate to say this again, but I would follow the guidance that it's in SWI 142.2 and the QSB. I know I have seen on inspection reports inspectors saying tags not available, or grower not available, or tags not checked, or something along those lines, just to indicate that the inspector wasn't able to do that verification check. And I don't often see inspectors providing that information afterwards, although I'm not looking for that, so I may not notice. But I wouldn't delay a report because a tag's not available. I would certainly make every effort to provide that report on time, just because I think that's probably the bigger, that might be a major or critical. I'm not sure, but I think that would be the bigger transgression rather than not checking tags.
Oh, good, thank you.
Okay, I'm not saying you're hearing any more questions. If you do have any questions that come to mind after this session, please do not hesitate to email them to me. There's a lot of different pieces of information that's been presented today, and so you may wake up in the middle of the night with a burning question. I hope not, but it could happen, or something may come to you afterwards. So please send me an email with a question. I'll make every effort to have it addressed in a timely manner. If you have any concerns, please forward those as well. And I wish you all very much a very successful 2021 season. I hope everybody stays healthy and safe.